Hey, good afternoon. Good happy Tuesday afternoon to everybody. Welcome to PCA Live 3 at 3. We've got a great show. Very excited about today's show because I often love to talk about the cigar industry and the cigars industry's passion for giving back. And so today's show is all about the importance of this program and how it gives back, and it gives back to a very important community. I know to a lot of our cigar smokers that are out there and our cigar retailers as well. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest. We have Storm Boen from Cigars for Warriors joining us today. And joining me from PCA is Aaron Holland. Storm and Aaron, both of you, happy Tuesday. Thank you very much for joining the broadcast today. How's everyone doing?
Great. Thank you. How are you?
Thank you for having us on here.
Absolutely. So, how is everything going? I know that we're kind of starting to come out of somewhat of this COVID haze that's been surrounding everything, but how are you doing, and how's everyone involved with Cigars for Warriors doing right now amidst all of this?
It's been very interesting, as you can imagine. It's been with everything. There's some pros and cons to it all. The benefits is we've had a lot of free time to get some of our internal organization a little bit better in hand. Since CFW started in 2012, it's been like drinking water out of a fire hose. It was originally, the whole concept was supposed to be 4 or 5 hours a month hobby. And overnight it turned to, 60 hours a week, going as hard as we could. And we never ever had time really to get some of those true organizational little details done. It's always important for every company to have. So there's a benefit for that. We still got ways to go, as any company does, especially when you're 100% all volunteer.
Yeah.
Scott, if you're a volunteer and I ask you, can you get this done? It may take you in a paid world, 40 hours. In a volunteer world, you're looking at 6-7 months.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the hardest things to learn. Because I went straight from the military to charity. So I never got to have the fun with being a supervisor over regular civilian jobs. It was straight, do this or that to pretty please. And so the benefit of that is we've got some of those little details really worked on. The con to it all, of course, is our donations really, really dried up. There have been a few great communities that have stuck with us, and we knew this was going to happen, and we prepared our best. But there's been some pretty good social media communities, some cigar clubs, a few social clubs that have gone out of the way to do events for us, Facebook Live events, cigar drives, monetary drives. So we're surviving pretty well. We're getting pretty close to being depleting of our cigars as right now. We're still shipping out just as many requests as we ever did. In fact, I would say we have even more requests from our troops. They're probably ones going through the worst of everybody. People don't realize with the military, military does everything over the top as far as safety, and with the COVID, these guys are put in some pretty duress situations, and so they deserve as many cigars and downtime as they can get. But like the question was, how are we doing? We're doing very well as an organization itself. Volunteers actually increased. Donation-wise, we're starting to pick back up. As me and Aaron were talking about earlier, there's a lot of companies slowly starting to open up, which means we'll be slowly getting more donations from our cigar shops.
And Storm, since you're talking about all this, can you explain to some people who may be watching that aren't very familiar with Cigars for Warriors what you do, and just explain a little bit more about it?
Happily. So Cigars for Warriors, as far as we know, is the only 501c3, and we are a federal mandated charity. We're filed out of Florida and Texas, both. And our primary mission is to get the number one requested item our deployed troops want into their hands, which are premium cigars. We knew this as a gut instinct at the beginning. We found out we were 100% correct after a 3-year-long survey. So we definitely have the facts behind us that that's what the troops want, men and women. So one of the things a lot of people do not realize is we also send the number 2 and number 3 items that the troops want, which is coffee and video games. Now, depending on what region and what year it was, what was more important, coffee or video games. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I never understood that one. So, but we do send a lot of coffee, a lot of video games. We send a ton of cutters, lighters. We send magazines in every single box. There's been a Cigar Press magazine since day one in every box. Cigar Snob's thrown a lot of magazines toward us as well over the years. And so we try to give the troops as many things as we can. There's been interesting swag we've been given over the years by some cigar shops, by other non-cigar related shops. We've had some pretty fun calendars sent to us that we sent to the troops as well. So, but the primary, there's always cigars in every box. Some important factors is that they're 100% requested. So we never, ever send randomly, which is very important, especially if you ever served in the military, you understand why. Last thing you want is, let's say, the sergeant major in the back tent smoking all the cigars where the troops are out front and not getting any. We don't care about rank. We've noticed over the years that 85% of the requests are coming from enlisted, which is, to me, very appropriate. They're the ones that are really doing the hard work. But don't take anything away from the officers. But we do have officers that request. But just because you're a captain doesn't mean you're going to get more than a sergeant is, or vice versa. Those are very important standards that we've kept since day one. Those will never change. It's appropriate that way. So those are the main things. Now, how we do it, the mission statement is very simple, but how we do the logistics is very complex, as you can imagine. As we said earlier, it's a 100% volunteer organization, but we've been very blessed with some of the most amazing volunteers since day one. Some of these people put 20, 30 hours a week in, 100% volunteer time. So that's very impressive when you think about those numbers.
Yeah.
So, how did you get started in this? I mean, I know, like you said, you went straight from the military to this, doing charity work. What was the genesis for Cigars for Warriors?
Well, I was still in the military. I was on medical. I got injured pretty severely, and so I had a little bit of free time on my hands. And they finally got me home. And my brother-in-law was helping me one day here at the house. We were rebuilding my man cave, and he said, "Let's get a cigar." I said, "That's great." So we hobbled into the cigar shop, grabbed a cigar, and I just happened to grab the lowest one. Had no clue what I was really doing. Now, I've always smoked cigars in the military because there's so many amazing traditions around it. But quite frankly, I didn't really know what I was doing, how to pick them out right. You know, I was the guy that saw a foot-long $2 cigar versus a 4-inch $12 cigar. I grabbed the big old foot-long one.
Sure.
And tried to smoke it like a cigarette. Now, to me, it was always about what was happening, the occasions while we were smoking cigars, which is why it made the cigars great. We all know that emotions create a serious, enhance your cigars, and especially what's going on. Well, that was always what was happening for me in the military. And so my brother-in-law said, when I grabbed a tobacco special. To this day, I remember it. And, put some of the meds that the docs had us on. Didn't leave a lot of room for taste buds. So all of a sudden I had flavor. I was like, wow, this is great. And of course, my brother-in-law was like, slow down. It's not a cigarette. Tighten it up. Smoke it right. And I enjoyed it. I said, what do you want to do the next day? Do you want to get another cigar? I said, yeah, it'd be great. So I grabbed it and I reached down in and I thought, well, in my logic, that was great. I'll grab the one next to it. And I had to grab the Java. Again, flavor. Not ever had a flavored cigar in my life, and a few cigar ever. I was blown away. Immediately I got hooked. And one day I was on Facebook just looking around. And I was playing those really horrible games they have on there. And I thought I was typing to Google because I looked at the cigar bands that said Drew Estate. I thought I was typing on Google, but I actually was typing on Facebook search engine, and it opened up all these cigar groups.
Oh, okay.
What the hell is this about? it just blew me away. Cigar groups for tobacco. It made no sense to me, but I kept reading it. I wanted to learn more about cigars, and the more I learned, the more I got fascinated. Very long story short, after a few social media incidents where I got my butt chewed out multiple times, I thought, I'll start my own cigar group. And it will be 5 of us. We can say where the hell we want. No one's going to chew us out. And so I started CATS. It stands for Cigar Aficionado Trade and Sales. It was the first non-cigar shop or cigar manufacturer related social media cigar group, which,
nice.
Of course, created a ton of controversy. And, it was fun. So the first day we had 1,000 people joining, and it just kept growing. And from there, I was talking to one of the gentlemen he found out he was he retired in the Navy, and then became a nurse and became a nurse administrator, started teaching nursing. And a great guy named Ben Edmondson. And we were talking about what a cigar meant to me while in combat. I would have my wife send me cigars. A really bad deployment was when we invaded Iraq. There was a ton of suicides. And so I made me worry about it. I'd worried about my troops. So I would make my guys smoke a cigar after a really bad incident. That's not so kosher saying making them, but the way I thought about it was they didn't disappear in a dark corner for 8-9 hours thinking about whatever happened. They knew that for the next 2 hours I'd take my rank off and they could say anything they wanted.
Yeah.
Now, given a lot of times my name came up with a bad curse word, but they knew they could get away with it. And it gave them a way to vent, it gave them a way to visit with each other without any repercussions. And found it very successful. Well, again, long story short, I was telling Ben about that. And he said, well, there's a guy running around on social media and he's sending cigars to the troops. So I eventually found this guy, and I brought in other people to help him out. And long story short, again, this gentleman turned out to be a fraud. He said he was a Navy SEAL commander, turned out he never even served in the military, had a police record 1.5 miles long. Now, I'd say this because I think it's very important about the history of Cigars for Warriors. Because as you can imagine, I said I didn't want to do it again. I was embarrassed. I put my name behind this guy. Apologized. I went on the, as they call it, the apology tour. Apologized to every social media group it was, etc. And one of the ladies who was one of the volunteers named Elaine Dibinato, she came to me and said, we should keep doing this. The mission is beautiful. I forget a lot, but to this day, that one line has stuck with me. And she was right. The mission is beautiful. So I said, when everybody got with me, there were 7 of us. I said, I personally have 3 conditions if I do this. We're going to go hard and fast. We're going to do it 100% by the book, bylaws, ARC associations, NPO status, 501c, all that. And I said, I don't want to run anything. So I got 2 out of 3 of my wishes. And again, it was one of those accidents. Again, this is supposed to be a 4 or 5 hour a month kind of hobby. It was never supposed to blow up. But we had our first board of directors meeting, and one of the stories I like telling when I do some speeches is that people, say, what's the most ironic thing that ever happened? I said, well, first meeting we ever had, I said, we got to have a first-year, slightly impossible goal. And we're looking at each other like we are now on Google Hangouts. And everybody's just kind of, no one wants to say anything. So I just threw out a number. I said, 800 cigars the first year sent to our troops. I got cussed out. Where the hell are we going to get 800 cigars? Where we're going to find people who want the cigars? How do we get it out? Where we're going to get the money to ship it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, well, that's why it's called an impossible goal. Well, the first month we shipped out 860 cigars. And the first year we shipped out 92,300 cigars.
That's fantastic.
So it was impossible, just not for the reasons you were saying. It was impossible because it was impossibly low.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I missed the mark by a little bit, but the first 6 months was all social media community that came behind us and got and donated, and so from there I started reaching out to companies, of course, and the first retailer, and that was a big deal for us just to get into retail stores, was Smokers Haven in my hometown. John Curtis owns it. oldest cigar shop in Texas. And, quite frankly, to put it less than delicate, he had a lot of balls to do it. He didn't really know me a whole lot. He didn't know the program. There's so many, I hate to say it, shady programs out there. And so he took a lot of trust to do that. The next gentleman.
I didn't get that. Could you try?
Sorry about that. The next
My Siri does the same thing, man. It seems like it's going to be listening and then it pops up. So
I don't know why
I totally get that.
I think she's haunted.
They're always listening, Storm. They're always listening.
And so the next gentleman, and I reached out to, of course, next was manufacturers. Well, you can imagine the response. We love supporting the troops. We do it in our own way. Jonathan Drew was the first one that actually started saying, all right, send me your bylaws. Send me your article associations. I want to meet all your board of directors, et cetera, et cetera. So he went through everything. Now being a former lawyer, which I didn't know at the time,
Yeah.
he grilled me and grilled me and grilled me. After a while, we got a pretty good trust going on, and he asked me what the biggest things that could help us. He said, you're going to get money from us one way or the other. You're going to get cigars from us. What else can I do to help you guys out? I said, well, I need you to trust me on something, but I want you to put us in your booth at IPCPR. He said, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You can't do nothing there. You can't collect cigars there. I said, I don't have any desire to collect one single donation. He said, well, I don't understand. I said, well, you keep telling me to trust you. Maybe this trust me on this one. So after a lot of discussion, he did. And he put us in his booth at the trade show. And, I took a huge chance not knowing if I was going to be right or wrong, but I think I was right. That because he did that, one, he asked IPCPR if we could be there, and they said yes, very graciously. And then Drew Estate, of course, had us there. Well, that put two of the major companies in the cigar industry showing that they supported us. Immediately, it gave us credibility and put us 10 years ahead of the game, which is where I was trying to go to. Because at the end of the day, that's the hardest part about starting a charity is credibility. And from there, it's been drinking water out of a fire hose. And a big, huge piece of that is IPCPR and Drew Estate at the beginning. So
I'm curious, like, building off of that, how do you work with retailers and even manufacturers today? Presently, how do you work with them to complete the mission? And
well, retailers, it hasn't changed a whole lot outside. It's getting a little bit more standardized or a little bit more enforced standardization. But the retails, the way we built it is in every program we do, we have a few things that were very important to us. Is one, we want those who support us, we try our damnedest that they always come out ahead more than we do. Because at the end of the day, we know that those who are supporting us are working for their livelihood. And so we want them to come out ahead because we know by them coming out ahead, our donations will always come back naturally. And last thing I want is anytime Scott Pierce sees me that he runs for the hills because I'm going to be begging him for something. I want him to be excited to see Cigars for Warriors, not the other way around. So that's been very important for us. Having our volunteers where they never, ever ask for anything for personal reasons. That's another important factor. We do a very low pressure game. It's more of a long game if you want to call it that. And because we want everybody to be excited about CFW, not the other way around. With the retailers, we have several programs. Of course, the donation centers. People donate a cigar, put it in the box, and once a month, those donation centers will ship to us those cigars. And that worked great, whether it's 5 cigars or 5,000 cigars. It's a big piece of the game. Pre-FDA Nightmare, Famous Smokes was our biggest supporter as far as cigar donations. They did an average between 4,000 and 8,000 cigars every single month.
wow.
Drew Estate was our biggest cigar donations. They did an average of 2,000 a month. But they also did a lot of other things, monetary and political, et cetera, for us. Another stat people like to know was the biggest single donation, which was, again, Drew Estate. They did 36,000, but that was all because of a nice competition we got going. CI started it out with 30,000. And then within a week, I talked to Oliva, and they did 35,000. And then Drew Estate, they said, well, we got to do a little bit better than that, so they shipped 36. So my poor director of logistics, Robert Allen, all of a sudden within 3 weeks had about, 90,000, 100,000 cigars show up.
Wow.
He works for a cigar shop in Florida. They're very gracious in helping him out. And on that occasion, the owner actually shut down the shop for 2 days. And the clientele and his employees and him all got together and repackaged everything, got it all unboxed out of the hardware box, put in Bovita bags, etc. And speaking of that, Bovita was literally our first sponsor period. Before we even started CFW, they were our first one. They are what we know that our cigars are always taken care of. They give us multiple humidification degrees, meaning we have actually some packs that are lower than normal 60 because people don't always send you the best shaped cigars. So we rehab them. Every cigar is important to us. We never ship damaged cigars. That's very important to us either. The troops deserve more respect in that. So we do quality control. We make sure every number is recorded. We have a great CFO, Mike Lorenzo, who records every single donation we ever get. And so these are very important things to us. The other things we do is like the raffles. That's very important. We usually like to take over the manufacturer's raffles or incentive programs, whatever you want to call it today. And this benefits everybody because it doesn't change what they normally do with their incentives. We just take it over, and we pass out the tickets, and we tell them, by the way, let's say it's a Oliva event, we'll tell them, by the way, if you donate a Oliva cigar today, you get another raffle ticket. So incentivize them to donate. Yep. And we say for every 2 non-Oliva cigars you donate, you get a raffle ticket. Well, a lot of people at first were like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? Well, at the end of the day, if Storm has a humidor and I bring a bunch of cigars I don't normally smoke anymore and I donate them because I'm going to get free raffle tickets, well, now I got a bunch of room in my humidor. I'm going to go buy cigars at that event.
Exactly.
And then every cigar that's not walked out the door, that's another cigar that gentleman's going to come back, or that lady is going to come back and buy. So it's a good business plan for both the manufacturer, the retailer, and the charity. So we like when it works out as a win-win-win. So that's the retailer side of things. And it really hasn't changed a lot over the years. It's outside of being a little bit more standardization, better ideas, more support, etc. We have special events some retailers will do for us. We've had retailers that will do golf tournaments for us. We had several pool tournaments, just special events where they'll bring in 3 or 4, I call them mini festivals. They'll bring 3 or 4 manufacturers in. We'll do competitions and do a fun, cigar rate drive. And the manufacturers will do some nice discounts, etc. In Texas, we have the most patriotic cigar shop competition every year in September. And that started through one of our social clubs in Houston. And so we got 12 cigar shops now involved in that. And they compete every year to see who's going to get the most cigars donated.
Nice.
And the Smoke Ring out of Sugarland won it last year. So they got this really ugly trophy we built. And we did it on purpose to get really ugly because I want people to go, what the hell is that? And then they can explain it.
They can explain it.
Yeah.
Does that competition really culminate on Constitution Day?
No, we try to stay away from that one.
Say September 17th. It culminates on Constitution Day for the most patriotic store. It'd be perfect.
Well, I mean, that's a good thought. We've always traditionally done it the last weekend of the month. It's every weekend of September, and every cigar shop's involved will get involved, and they'll have 2 to 3 to 4 manufacturers each event. And most of these shops will do a Friday and Saturday event every weekend of September. And people tend to look forward to it. And it's growing. Hopefully this year we'll be able to do it again with all this stuff. We don't know what's going to happen. And then we bring the manufacturers. We partner them with them in every way we can. Pre-FDA, of course, we want cigar donations. Post FDA, there's been a lot of tricks of the trade that people have done to get us cigar donations, but on whole, most of the manufacturers support us now doing it different ways, whether it's monetary, where it's donating a ton of swag, which is huge for us because we make 80% of our monetary donations come from raffles. Then you have great companies, like I said, Drew Estate. They do the barn smokers, which was created originally to support CFW and educate on their products. So they donate a pretty healthy check every single barn smoker, 10 grand. And then they bring in some, subculture studio, really nice raffles that they donate again. And we sell raffle tickets, and it's a great event. And this year they canceled all the barn smokers, but they did announce that they're going to go ahead and donate the whole 50,000 anyway. That's pretty amazing if you think about it, because I actually had felt that nothing was going to happen. I had no anger or upset about it. I just figured that's the way it's going to happen because everybody's hurting. And the last thing CFW wanted to do was, again, ask companies to support us when everybody's hurting. At the end of the day, there's no soldier on this planet that wants anybody to suffer for their benefit to get a cigar. So that's another very important concept for us, is that we never want to harm any of our supporters. You got to come out ahead. So those are just some of the ways. And I think I went off a little bit off topic. So
quite all right. And so beyond retailers, like consumers or anyone who's watching today, how could they get involved and help out with the cause?
There's a lot of ways. We do a big cigar festival that's made just for CFWs called Cats Fest every year in Texas. A lot of our big supporters show up to that, and they'll donate. We usually raise between 20, 25,000 in cash, and then typically another 7,000-8,000 in cigars. And for typically the numbers being around 500, 600 people, that's an amazing amount of cigars. Other festivals, we're typically part of about 90% of the major festivals. CI Fest being one of the first ones to get us involved. They've been gracious to let me do a speech every year at the end of each day, which has given us a lot of attention, as you imagine, with 7,000 people showing up, that gets us a lot of help. And then volunteers, of course, always. And it isn't just being event coordinators. Event coordinators being the funnest and probably most important of our jobs within CFW. We do take about any other skill set, anywhere from political operations to finance to grant writing to marketing, public relations. We have a 14-man board of directors, and each one of them, as a board of director, you're not just sitting there meeting once a month, you're working daily. That's one of the things we also believe is the top end of the charity. The whole purpose of it is support the bottom end of the charity. Our whole, and I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory term by saying bottom, but our big coordinators being the bottom of the totem pole, being also the most important position we have. And so our goals are to support those guys. And so our board of directors are all work a lot more than anybody else does. And they do it in the background. So much to the point that we do a workshop every year. Our very first year, I had people that said they didn't even know we had board of directors, which is crazy to me. But, that's the reality of things. It's not something. We have very, very humble people that work for us. And they don't just go running around and say, I'm a board of director all day long. They're very humble about it, and which is very important to me as well. So volunteers are another way to help out. If you just want to donate, you can go to our website. And forgive me for the website. It's in transition. It's not the prettiest thing right now these days, but we're working on creating a lot of back-end utilities. We have a Patriot program that we've been working on for about 18 months. And there's an incentive program within the Patriot program. But the Patriot program is designed to bring in and encompass all the elements within CFW. Whether we're talking about donation centers, whether we're talking about manufacturers, whether we're talking about trade shows, etc. Most of them have a tier system. And then we have the Cavalry program we're building. This is our big incentive program where hopefully the people in the public will see and want to support. And it's basically you do a certain act or you do a certain donation and you move up in rank. And we use a cavalry system since it's the most, cavalry doesn't exist outside of helicopters. That way I don't have the Marines upset with the Army and the Army upset with the Air Force that we're not using their rank. Right. Now, given the cavalry most resembles the Army rank, which I'm a little bit biased since I'd spent my 20 years in the Army. So, but it's a program designed to have fun. If you make a certain rank, you get a special gift. Let's say that you make sergeant, PCA donates a cutter to every guy that has PCA on it, Patriot program, whatever. And the only way you can ever get that cutter is if you make that rank. You can't get it at stores, you can't get it in an event, etc. This helps out those companies support us. They get more marketing value. So those are just some of the ways. And like I said, if you have a skill set that I haven't talked about or you don't see, trust me, we can use it. I haven't found a skill set yet that I haven't been able to figure out a way to work with.
Nice.
So you're talking, it's just kind of funny. You keep saying CFW, and it to me, that almost sounds like some sort of wrestling federation. So I feel like you might need to hold a big wrestling tournament for a big fundraising event, the CFW champions.
Well, technically it's Operation Cigars for Warriors. Technically it's Operation Cigars for Warriors, but over the years it's become a lot of years saying CFW.
Yeah.
Or Op CFW. And you'll see that written in different ways. Tobacco business, I typically write an article every issue. And I'm trying to educate the readers, CCFW, because, one, I get to save some words on my article.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else you got for me?
Okay, I can ask you. So you do such amazing work. I'm curious if you have any particular stories that you could share, either success stories or stories from the troops that you've heard that really have touched you.
We've had some pretty amazing stories. I don't put a lot of them on social media or website because some of them are pretty personal. They've never said they can't, but it just kind of feels a little bit like propaganda a little bit. Some of the stories that I told you, you wouldn't truthfully believe. But one of my favorite letters, let's talk about that one, is a mom. And it starts out, I hate all things tobacco. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And it was sent directly to me, which was interesting too. And I hate all things tobacco. I think anybody smokes cigarettes or dumb, etc. Just going on. Well, the very next program, but I want to thank Cigars for Warriors for what y'all do. You sent my son 2 packages while he's deployed. He says it single-handedly helped him fight all PTSD issues he had and his troops. And she put a check for $1,000.
Wow.
So we went from a lady who hates all things tobacco to supporting us. So to me, it's one of the big things we talk about. Forget the word tobacco. Think about what the mission is. Think about taking care of our troops. Think about what it does for our men and women. We've had psychologists put their names behind us saying, in medical, saying that the mental health benefits have outweighed any potential health risk. That's huge when you put your credentials behind that.
Yeah.
We've had letter after letter saying almost word for word, first steps of fighting PTSD. When you think about that, how do you fight PTSD when you come home? Well, most of the time they put you in group therapy. What do? You just talk. So when you're thinking about when you're out in combat and the guys get together in an evening, and I say guys in a generic term, the men and women get together, and most of them are taken on. And I thought my situation was unique, and truthfully, there was nothing unique or original about what I was doing. They've been doing it, and they're doing it even more nowadays, smoking cigars in the evenings, and they all sit around, talk, and relax, and download, purge the bad stuff, and create a good memory. And that's huge against when you're talking about all the elements you're facing in those deployments and those critical situations that are going on. Now, people ask me, why are the numbers so high? Well, you got to think about the military. There has been a huge push in the last 10 years of a cessation of cigarettes and snuff. They've never touched cigars. There's so many traditions around cigars in the military. And in fact, now there's, not us military guys, we have to organize everything. So there's tons of new clubs out there. We have clubs that are, single branch army, and it may be, let's say the Taliban Cigar Club. Again, it's a weird ass name, but most of us guys in the military are a little bit thrown off anyway. So they have a Taliban Cigar Club in Kandahar, Taliban Cigar Club chapter in Kuwait and to Iraq, etc. And so then you have other ones that are multi-branches that allow contractors to come in. You have a lot of contractors that are embedded with the troops. Now we do not ever send to the contractors, but if we send, cigars to Erin and she has some contractors embedded with her and she wants to give them her cigars, they're her cigars at that point. That's another piece of the element a lot of people don't realize is that we have the ability to vet every single person who requests cigars. I feel pretty confident that no one else has those abilities. I'd say we're probably 98% have been correct of who we're sending to. And I'm very, very proud of that because you'd be surprised the requests we get from the, Canadians to the Albanians to the Russians to whoever's, deployed with those in that APO. We have the ability to vet every single APO address and make sure that person's actually a person. Basically because of our military liaison directorate. And so we have active duty people. That's one of the things, Erin, that you might like, is that we knew we were doing something right because originally this wasn't anything more than say, thank you for what you're doing. Here's a small little token of saying thank you. But we figured we were doing something right just when we had volunteers. We had troops come back and volunteer for us. In fact, our very first recipient, Captain Daniel Madugo, is still one of our volunteers to this day.
Wow.
He's in Arizona. So some of these stories have been pretty neat. There's a couple of guys that showed up at Cigar Fest in 2014. In fact, I didn't recruit them. They basically recruited some of my best volunteers that we still have today at Cigar Fest. It was 4 gentlemen who traveled from different parts of the country who were all to get on a deployment in Iraq. And they got, in the evenings, they'd all get together and smoke a cigar. And they decided when they found out Cigars for Warriors was going to be at Cigar Fest, they didn't know anything about Cigar Fest. They all wanted to come see us, and they drove across the country to meet us.
Wow.
Sadly, one of the gentlemen passed away on the drive, but the other 3 decided to keep on coming.
Yeah. Wow.
And to say it was pretty emotional was an understatement. And the things that they said that what the cigars did for them, again, was very emotional. And there were several people standing around them just hearing it. And by the end of the day, they all came volunteer for me. And they're still volunteers.
Wow.
There's just pretty neat stories. Again, saying them out loud to me seems a little bit over the top. Let's just say that, our purpose was never that. It was always to say thank you. We never had any idea that some of the simple cigar could mean so much. And in the day, that's good because the whole industry should know that. People at home should know that. And the guy smoking cigars should realize that. You smoke a cigar for a great occasion. You smoke a cigar because you had a bad day. Well, imagine what it is in a deployment zone.
Yeah.
You can multiply that by 1,000 easily and probably not even come near that. And that's one of the points I always want to bring out is that if that cigar did you such good that day, imagine what it's doing to the young female service member in Kuwait. And multiply it by 1,000, you're touching it.
Right.
Another fun fact you might like is that I usually have someone always ask me, what do you send the ladies? Same thing. And we've had 8 months in 8 years that we've had more female requests than we've had males. Now I want you to do the math on this, the math of women to men in combat zones, the ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So those months, you're looking at 90% of the women asking for cigars. And I'm throwing numbers at that point out, but the ratio is amazing to me. So in a combat zone, there's no such thing as male or female. It's all about the smoking cigar and why we're doing it. Hope I answered a good question.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to where a couple of years ago, before I really had a chance to really talk to you in depth about Cigars for Warriors, I'd heard of it, but there was a former Congressman Carney from Pennsylvania. He had served, and his son's serving now. But he talked about the fact of when serving, and he's in the Middle East, he can't come back and unwind with a beer, And he said, so we got used to, and he said, we'd come out of the box. And at the end of the day, it was stressful. I wanted to sit down and I wanted to have a cigar. That's what we had. We had cigars so that we could unwind, we could decompress. And so we looked forward to it. And we were talking, and I know that this is obviously a really touchy subject, but that was talking at the time. It was under the auspices of trying to get military exemptions for the 21 and older for the T21 Act that ended up going into play there. So we talked about that at great length. And it was my first foray into truly understanding how significant it was, how significant a part of life it was for soldiers that were serving, particularly in these intense situations. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we had a chance to talk at last year's show. And for me, this is where it really, really drove home the point about how important the work is you talked about this already with PTSD and the success that you have had where you've noticed that those that will join you to sit down and have cigars on a consistent basis, like they're being able to work through the PTSD, because we know, I believe it's still the case. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. There's an average of 22 suicides a day for soldiers. Is that correct still?
At home, yes.
At home, yeah, once they come home. And so this becomes a very important component for kind of what you've talked about, why people have signed on the mental health aspect, right? Which the interesting point about that as well is that while we're talking about Cigars for Warriors, that's true across the board. Look at the stressful situations a lot of people are in right now, right? Sharing a cigar, having one, unwinding it, etc., is all very good regardless of the situation that you're in. And because of that, it's even more poignant for the soldiers when they're in these situations, having to decompress and having to re-enter life, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if you want to even dive into that a little bit when we talked about the trade show about that and some of the success and or stories and or impact that these type of events or things that you're doing with Cigars for Warriors, having cigars with soldiers that have come home, how that has helped them transition, how that has helped them work through some of these issues.
I got one little story, and I'm going to try to answer, and hopefully it'll flow together. And I hope the gentleman will forgive me if he hears this. It was, I want to say 2015, and it was a guy in Special Forces, first sergeant. And he came up to me and he said, first off, I want you to know I'm not crazy. I'm not unstable in any manners. And being an SF, first sergeant, trust me, he's pretty stable. He said, for whatever reason, the day the box arrived, your box arrived. I have no idea why. Well, I have a few ideas of what he said, but the pressure got to me and I was ready to eat some lead. And he said, for whatever reason, that box showed up. I opened it up and it put a smile on my face. I moved on to the next day. And the next day I had a cigar and I moved on to the next day. He said, after about 7 days, I didn't have those issues going on. He said, can't tell you why it meant that much to me. Can't tell you what it stopped me from doing anything, but it did. So again, there was another one of those situations. This was at smoking in the Carolinas. Had a few ladies standing around that heard us, and 2 of those 3 ladies are still volunteers for me that really work hard because they heard that one story. And to me, it was pretty neat the way he kept saying, the next day I smoked a cigar. So he looked forward to it. In my mind is what I felt. He was looking forward to it all day, smoked that cigar, enjoyed it, had that downtime, and he was able to take the next step and move on. And then moving forward, we've had volunteers come join us, and a lot of the conditions of PTSD is being in public's hard sometimes, being in large crowds is hard sometimes. For me, it was something. I've always been one of those, call it moronic or not. I tend to have issues. I tend to face it, and with my head against the wall and beat it until the wall breaks down. So I'll do crowds. I'll do public speeches, and even to this day, doing speeches makes me pretty nervous. Being in crowds, it's not always enjoyable, but you get out there and you do it, and you keep working hard at it. You put yourself in a situation. And as one of my guys told me one day, he said, "What helps me get through PTSD is going to an event, and I put that event as a mission for me, just like I was in the military. And that mission is to get to the event, get as many donations, to get to my brothers and sisters that are still deployed." And that has helped me more than anything. So something that just as simple as doing a cigar event helps the guys. You can either not face it, or you can face it in a different way. And I think we've had pretty good success for everybody that has been strong supporters or volunteers that have had some of those issues. And truthfully, I'm very proud of those numbers, and I hope we can continue doing. I really liked having my military volunteers. One thing is really easy. I don't have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings. I just tell them to do something, they get it done, and that's always fun. And you're used to that. But yes, I think it's been a pretty neat travels that we've done since 2012, seeing this. The evolution of what an idea was to what it is today. And the mission really hasn't changed a lot, but the purpose has changed a lot to me. I think the purpose of people supporting, like, CPA supporting CFW has changed a lot. The reasons why. Companies like Drew Estate, Aliva, Asylum, Tom Mazuka is a huge supporter. He's made swags, pretty cool swag, just us who do raffles. Haram Solomon, we have the cigar coming out. Caldwell Cigars, his forgive my French, is called Give a Fuck Cigar, which I love the name of. 100% of the proceeds are going to go to CFW, and that's pretty amazing when you think about that. Miami Cigars, they did a cigar where 100% of the proceeds went to us. In fact, that cigar never made to the shelf. It sold out so fast. So it's been some pretty neat stories within the industry itself, what the industry has done behind the scenes. A lot of these companies I've worked with actually do not want any recognition for it. And I'm going to throw his name out anyway. The gentleman that made not Oscar, but oh my Lord, I just forgot his name. Wears yellow sunglasses. Jim Robinson, right?
Yeah.
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 First time I met him, 2012, he walked in and handed me a $1,000 check. So I wanted to go out there and announce it. I mean, that's huge. Our biggest donation at that time was $10. And literally almost every time I see him, he hands me something, either a big wad of cash or a big check. And he actually got upset with me one year at Cats Fest when I got up on the stage and announced it. So he's very humble in that way, which has always impressed me, because he could, I want to give him recognition. I want to give him, he should get some good pats on the back. He should get some extra business because he supported the troops. But he's just one of the small stories that are like that within this industry. It's an amazing industry, great people. It's one of the things I got hooked to. It wasn't the cigar so much; it was actual people of the industry.
Yeah,
and that's the industry. And I say industry, I mean supporters. I mean the cigar smokers. There's only 1% of cigar smokers that people don't want to be around. The other 99% are phenomenal people.
Yeah,
and that's why I've enjoyed this so much. And I think that's why some biggest reasons that when you look at statistics, a good volunteer will last you 90 days to 180 days tops. We've had volunteers since 2012.
Yeah.
So it's been a really amazing travels and missions. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Would you ask me originally, Scott?
No, I mean that was a big portion of it, and I found the answer interesting. Was just talking about kind of the work with the PTSD and being able to sit around and have a cigar and how that helps with folks. But the interesting thing there, though, is that the other part of being able to give back of soldiers coming home, the purpose and having that other purpose that's there, and that's something I hadn't even really thought about before, to be honest with you. But I get it, right? You're used to having a service and a calling that's bigger than yourself, and coming back to that, and you start going into something that's not necessarily the same thing, that can probably exacerbate a lot of those PTSD feelings as well. So that's a really interesting response that you had there, is that providing an opportunity for soldiers to give back and, again, continue that tradition that they have. They've been putting their whole heart and soul into something that's bigger than themselves. You give them an opportunity to continue that kind of work too. So that's an important part of it. I hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah, it's been very successful. Again, like I said, I love our military. I mean, that's why I do this. And I like to, our term has always been, we like to serve those who've been serving us. And to me, that's very important. I can't serve anymore in the military, so this is my way of hopefully helping my brothers and sisters that are still out there. And I think a lot of men and women are coming back and either getting out or going on reserve status or lighter duty and active duty, have the opportunity to want to come help us. Sometimes it's only one event. Sometimes it's, like Daniel since 2012. And you said it, I wish I could have you write that down, because that was beautiful what you just said, the way you worded it.
And this is recorded, so.
Oh, great. So everybody will hear me mumbling a few times. But yeah, the purpose, and whether you're talking about volunteering or supporting, the purpose is, it does give you good feelings about what you're doing. And even we are the most non-politically correct charity on this planet, since we do send tobacco to the troops. But we are also, one of the things we're very proud of, we're also one of the most transparent charities on the planet. We've proven this because we're on guidestar.org, which is the premier watchdog group for all nonprofits. You have, just to get on there in a good way, is hard. And then you have levels of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. When we hit platinum status, we got an email saying only 0.01% of nonprofits in the United States ever make it to platinum. And it's all about your transparency. It's about how you use your money, how you use your donations. Well, considering we're a 100% volunteer organization, that's pretty easy. Again, for transparency, we do give a few people a small stipend. People that do 20, 30 hours a week, I'll try to let them buy a steak dinner once a month. So it's not very big, but it's a small way of saying thank you. Some of these guys probably deserve a full-time salary. I would love to be able to do that someday, but right now I'm able to give them go buy dinner for your family and say thank you. I think it's very appropriate to do that. So I like to say that in transparency, that we do that once in a while. Well, every month we do it, but it's small and it's only a handful of people. It's not me, by the way. So we're really proud of it. And one of the big things I want to say is thank you to PCA, former IPCPR, for the things y'all supported us in the past. In fact, you're the only trade show we've ever had to come to Cats Fest. Y'all did it for the first 2 years and wrote out big fat checks, and that was really nice. Having us at the trade show every year, again, helps legitimacy. Helps a retailer who may never heard of us walk up and see us, and they're here at the trade show. They must be legit, and gives the opportunity. A lot of times, retailers not knowing how to reach out to us or forget about us every day, and then they see the booth and this is time to do business. They come and do business, and so it creates a lot of opportunities. So again, thank you for that. I'm very excited about next year's PCA. See what we can get done, and greatly appreciate y'all having us on the show. And if there's anything CFW can ever do for PCA, let us know.
I think, as you were talking and as we were going through this, one of the things I really would love to do, we do an education series. And once we can kind of get back to normal here on Capitol Hill. So our office, we've got this great venue where we bring in folks from Capitol Hill, staffers, et cetera, to educate them on what the premium cigar industry is all about. I would love to do a Cigars for Warriors event where we can start going through this and the importance of cigars for the troops, the importance of cigars, the military, and a lot of stuff that we talked about here, to really start giving them insights into this, and even bringing in, like we said, with having, non-political, both sides of the aisle, both have stories, right? Congressman Carney, he's a Democrat, right? We've got Republicans, both. We can get in there. They can both talk about their experiences with cigars in the service and why it's important. And because that's a story you're not going to hear about cigarettes. Just tending to your point, right? There's a mother that's out there that hates cigarettes, and no doctor is going to sign off and say, no, go ahead and smoke cigarettes because it's good for your health. But they're going to tell you smoking cigars is actually beneficial because we know that the health issues that exist from a standard cigar smoker don't exist for these other smokers, for these other products. So I think that would be a fantastic presentation to have for Capitol Hill.
Absolutely.
And another big thing for us on a political side of things is that we have a big push on the exemption for the troops in both FDA and the 21 rule. I worked very, very hard to get the exemption in Texas on the 21 rule. And then the national one just took me, all of us blindsided. We had no idea that was even in the works. We knew it was in the works, but we had no idea it was even remotely that far along. And we just got Texas pushed through that if you're in the military, you get an exemption. If you're a man or woman, you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you're in combat, if you're in the military, you're an adult. You're willing to take a bullet, but you can't have a cigar. You can do so many things, but you're not allowed to choose for yourself. I mean, you put restrictions on kids all day long. But if you're an adult, you're an adult. But that, to me, that's even more important for if you choose to support your country, put yourself harm's way for your fellow Americans, for your fellow world, because American troops support the whole world in many ways that most people have no clue about. These people in America that are talking trash about our military being in other countries, they have no idea what we do for these other countries. I spent many deployments just doing humanitarian issues.
Right.
It's just amazing what our military does. And Central America alone, I mean, most of those countries will tell you what we do for them. We got Hoy de Nicaragua on board with us early on because Juan and Dr. Cinco kept talking about what their experiences were with the U.S. military and the changes it did for them in Nicaragua. Honduras, we do a lot of work. So that's one of our big things, and I'm very proud to say that out loud. That we will always fight that 21 rule for our troops. That exemption for the FDA as far as manufacturers being able to donate, which is again insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Because one, I never understand how a cigarette company is going to give to a charity anyway. What are you going to do? Give to like the Orphans of America cigarettes? That made no sense to me. So, and cigars is even more important, especially when you're talking about the troops. Congressman Hunter, before he had to resign, was a big proponent. Congressman Castor, she's doing very well for us. So I think it's a good joint effort we could do together as well. But I think it's a great idea what you have. Education is what it is. We have to educate. And as you said, this is not a political issue. This is both sides of the aisle should be involved on this.
Exactly.
We have military personnel, former military on both sides of the aisle that we should be able to get together on this. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are coming up on our hour. I just want to say thank you very much for all of your work, not only for joining us today, which was huge, but thank you very much. I lived with my brother-in-law who was a colonel in the Air Force, and just kind of to your point earlier, I remember before he was a colonel, he had his ranking officer that came over. They had dinner at the house when we were on the back patio and at the end of the night after dinner and talking and ruminating on a lot of different things. But one of the things they brought up was, God, for all the stuff that we do and everything else, if you're in the private sector, you make a whole lot more money, which is why a lot of guys will go over to consulting because they can make a killing doing that. And the colonel turned to me and he said, but you have to understand that's why they call it military service. You can never forget that service component. And it's such a huge, important part to recognize, to your point about what the women and men in uniform do on a consistent base. It needs to be understood in that context, that it really is a service. And for what they do, thank you so much for being able to give back to that, because it's very important. And I think in a lot of ways, ways the outcomes for what you do are far reaching. And I think that there's a lot of stuff in terms of mental health, like we talked about earlier, right? Going back into in service and going back into helping people. But then the other component too is really ultimately a unique pathway for a lot of us to be able to be involved in just showing in our own small ways our support and appreciation for those that are out there doing this type of service, because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, I completely echo what Scott is saying. And before moving back to DC, I lived in Virginia Beach, which is Hampton Roads, and huge military is involved in. I mean, you can't go 5 minutes without thinking about it, and so this is deeply meaningful to me as well. But I thank you for all that you're doing, and I think that we can definitely work together in the future, and really excited for what we can do.
And just all the comments on Facebook right here, right? Cigarsforwarriors.org. There's places there you can learn more about it. Cigarsforwarriors.org/donate. Go there and give to the cause, because there's really not much more of a worthy cause that we can kind of rely around as the cigar industry.
And if you really want to see a lot of what happens, go to our Facebook Cigars for Warriors group. And that's where we post all those phenomenal pictures. That's really when you really see it.
Yeah.
But look at the pictures. The pictures are amazing. It excites me. Meeting, one of the people asked me, how do I keep going every year? Because I do burn out, is I meet one of our recipients. And every time I meet a recipient, it refires me. Every time guys like you meet a recipient, you realize, wow, this is pretty neat. So I thank you both for everything y'all do for us. Thank you for fighting for our troops in DC, and keep up the good work.
Thanks for joining us, Storm. We really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining us. Facebook. Join us Thursday at 3 o'clock, and we'll have Art from Antigua Esteli will be on with us to discuss his company, his cigars, and some of the work that he's doing, and also another charity that he's working on there too. So, Storm, again, thank you so much. Cigarsforwarriors.org, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Enjoy, folks.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.